Dear colleagues and friends, I'm happy to be again with you. I'm ever happy to contact your excellent research team and group of University of Łódź. Thank you very much for the organizers of this meeting, of Jan Wolski and the other friends that invited me. I will speak to you about the sources of medieval Bulgarian law. This is a very complicated topic because um, the whole study of the sources of the medieval Bulgarian law is very confusing. Anyway, it is to say that we have a legal system created on the basis of the reception of the Byzantine law, but we cannot say many things about the application of this system. Anyway, let's start this lecture. Law is an essential part of the normative system of any state-organized society and one of the fundamental markers of group identity. Law is valued by itself, but also by its function of custodian and defender of the other values. That is the angle from which this lecture will approach the problem of law in Southeastern Europe during the Middle Ages, up to the Ottoman conquest. The period under consideration is one of dramatic changes associated, on one hand, to the state formation, and on the other, to the conversion to Christianity and the subsequent alignment either with the Roman Holy See or with the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople. All those transformations imply the creation of institutions and the flow. Since the existence of the Roman Empire predates the beginning of the period under consideration, besides the codification of the customary law, one can clearly follow the reception of the Roman law from different centers of influence. In the Balkans, the latter phenomenon is a direct result of the fact that early medieval states were created on the territory of the Eastern Roman Empire. This is especially true for Bulgaria, the earliest of all medieval states in the Balkans, and the existence of foreign rulers in these states, so foreign meaning Bulgars, Varangians, Magyars, had a considerable impact to how the dominant minority dealt with its customary legal tradition that influenced the entire society. Some scholars draw a sharp distinction between some Slavic states, like Bulgaria, Serbia, and Rus, on one hand, and Bohemia, Poland, Croatia, and Hungary, associated here despite not Slavic, on the other hand. The former group adopted the Byzantine culture and with that, the Byzantine ideas about state and law. Roman law came to Bulgaria and Serbia in its Byzantine interpretation. By contrast, it came as a part of West European cultural package to Bohemia, Poland, Croatia, and Hungary. This is, of course, strongly related to the mission of Saint Cyril and Methodius in Central Europe. The mission of two brothers, Constantine, later with the monk's name of Cyril, and Methodius from Thessaloniki, was requested by Duke Rostislav, the ruler of Great Moravia, and approved by the Byzantine Emperor Michael III. Judging by its character, this was a mission of evangelization aiming at converting and teaching the people of Moravia. However, from a broader perspective, the mission may also be regarded as a sudden penetration of East Roman cultural and religious influence in Central Europe. Most certainly, the mission had no juridical character, even though it bequeathed to posterity a relatively large quantity of legal texts and set the beginning of the Slavic legal language and culture. Most of these juridical texts formed so-called legatum juridicum sancti methodii, which includes the Nomocanon, which is in fact a translation of collection of 50 titles compiled by the great jurist of Antioch and later Patriarch of Constantinople, John Scholasticus. The law for judging the people, which is usually and with good reason regarded as the most ancient Slavic law, the so-called commandments of Holy Fathers, a collection of moral instructions included in the Glagolitic manuscript of Euclodion from the St. Catherine Monastery in Mount Sinai, which dates to 10th or 11th century. This is a special case because this collection is a result of influence not of the Byzantine canonic legal tradition of penitence, but of the Western tradition that contacted with the mission of Saint Cyril and Methodius in Moravia. And finally, the anonymous homily from the Glagolitic Codex Claudianus, or Glagolitic Claudianus. This is a work of moral teaching related to the power of law, which concern especially trials, but not a legal text stricto sensu. This server of Moravian mission was continued by the Balkan Slavs, Bulgarians and Serbians. The pre-Christian Bulgaria had its peculiarities, but the legal history of both nations after the evangelization should be studied together. Now I shall say some words about the pre-Christian Bulgarian legal, as I can, if I can dare to say this legal tradition. The pre-Christian Bulgaria, like most other barbarian states, is characterized by strong social, cultural, religious, and power dichotomy. From a legal point of view, this is a period of predominantly customary laws for different communities under the power of the Bulgar Khan. Unlike the barbarian states of Western Europe, no law code of any kind is known from Bulgaria in the early Middle Ages. Certainly, the most important source in that respect is a long list of answers that Pope Nicholas I gave to Gamburis of Bulgaria, responsa Nicolae Papet consulta Bulgarorum. In these answers, the Pope summarizes various questions before formulating his own answers. On that basis, several questions that the Bulgar Khan had asked can be reconstructed fairly well. Judging from the information that we now have in Nicholas I's letter, those customs were as diverse as the many legal aspects that they covered: personal and family law, penal law, judicial trial and witnesses, administrative rules and military structures and requirements, social, religious and political organization. Several historians have capitalized on a brief entry in the Byzantine lexicon Suda in its original 10th century text, Greek, as well as in the 16th century Slavonic translation. This is a text that we know from a lexicon, and it tells us about the decision of Khartoum after the conquest of the Avar Khaganate. He met the Avar dignitaries, captive Avar dignitaries, and asked them about the reasons of the fall of their great state. And after their answers, so the legend say that he gave some four actually laws to his people, the Bulgars. However, the laws of Khartoum mentioned in that lexicon entry is simply a mystification, pretending to have to be a witness for an attempt to create a customary law code in the early 9th century. An interesting source group forms so-called Bulgar or Proto-Bulgarian inscriptions. They contain information mostly about the institutions of the barbarian Bulgar state. Judging by what is known about the legal culture of pre-Christian Bulgaria, that was a typical barbarian society in transition from the tribal organization to state building and the establishment of central power. That was a strongly militarized society, the legal side of which was based on respect for traditional customs. There are indeed several parallels between rules mentioned in the responsory white paper and some similar customs in European post-steppe peoples. The only difference is the absence of any trace of codification of customary law in Bulgaria. The written law appears only after the Christianization, while the written culture was made possible by the adoption of the Slavic alphabets and the influence of the Byzantine culture. The main characteristic for the legal culture of Christian medieval Bulgaria is the reception of the Roman law in the form developed in Byzantium. This was a part of general process of reception of the Byzantine culture and inclusion into the Byzantine so-called by Dmitry Biliarsky Byzantine Commonwealth. This process began immediately after the conversion to Christianity in 864, but was accelerated during the 10th century. Unfortunately, there are not enough sources to follow that process in detail. Particularly regrettable is the lack of judicial or private acts, as well as any witness of how written rules were applied. Moreover, there is no Bulgarian copy of the main legal texts. It is therefore somehow somewhat problematic to discuss laws in Bulgaria on the basis of much later Eastern Slavic manuscripts. One of the most important bodies of secular law was adopted from Byzantium was the Ecloga. This was an adaptation and abbreviation of the Justinian law code done under the iconoclast emperor Leo III and Constantine V Copronymus. A Clogo arrived in Bulgaria together with the Byzantine missionaries that converted Bulgaria in 864. There is no surviving Bulgarian copy. Later it was translated in Slavonic language. There is no surviving Bulgarian copy of the text, but scholars agree that it was translated into Slav. Even, I have to underline, even the Russian comics, not only Bulgarian, was translated into Slav from its Greek original in the Old Church Slavonic. The adoption of this particular law code raises several questions. First, the Clogo was adopted and functioned as a general law touching upon many the social aspects, but after the restoration of Orthodoxy in 843, it was generally disregarded as a product of the iconoclastic policies. Because of that, it was replaced in Byzantium by the Isagoge, earlier called Epanagoge. In other words, by the time Bulgarian converted to Christianity, the Clogo was not popular in Byzantium. In fact, there are only a few surviving Greek manuscripts of that logo. It is therefore unclear why it was brought to Bulgaria and subsequently gained such great popularity among the Orthodox Slavs. Another problem concerns the application of the law in the Slavic countries in the Balkans. There is no direct source to describe how, in fact, the adopted Byzantine law operated in the new context. It is quite possible that the Clogo in Bulgaria was not adopted because it would fit to the local environment, but because of political and prestigious reasons. The law for judging the people, mentioned already above, as part of Legato Juridicum Sancti Methodi, was compiled on the basis of Title 17 of the Clogo. The emphasis is therefore on penal norms as well as on the judicial trial, marriage and other matters. There is a clear difference of penitential discipline on two otherwise plain code, and a pervasive concern with the protection of the new church institutions and clergy. Since its main goal was to implement Christian norms and moral values into a recently converted society, the law could work in Bulgaria as well as in Great Moravia. It is perhaps worth noting that the penitential practices reflected in the law are closer to those in Western, not in Eastern Christianity. If one accepts the idea that law was compiled in Great Moravia, by Saint Methodius or one of his disciples, and if the Clogo was indeed translated several years later into Slav, then the law for judging the people must have been available in Bulgaria for the scholars who, under Tsar Simeon, translated the Byzantine law code into Slavonic. Why? This law is compiled on the basis of the Title 17 of that law, but it contains too the unique article of the Title 18. Title 18 that regulated the distribution of the prey has only one article, and this one article article was added to this text based on the title 17. It is worth to note that the translation of the Ecloga of the whole code is the same. There is only 17 titles, because the title 18 of the Greek original was added to the title 17. So the approach was the same during the translation of compilation of the law for judging the people, and during the translation of the law. Of course, some more patriotic historians could say that the law is completed in Bulgaria, but this is the old theory that some leaders in Bulgaria continue to insist this, but there are much more problems I will not touch now. Unfortunately, nothing is known again about how the law was applied. Moreover, there never was any testing of this law in Serbia, in the other South Slavic country. In Byzantine manuscripts, the Ecloga is usually accompanied by one or several of four other legal texts. This is the farmer's law, known as Biornikos, the Mosaic law, known as Mosaikos, the soldier's law, known as Stratiotikos, and the Rhodian maritime law, known as Naftikos. Only the former two appear in Slavonic translations. The Slavonic farmer's law is known both from Bulgarian and Serbian manuscripts. The Byzantine original law appeared in the mid-10th century, probably. It is topic of discussion. And the old theory was that it appeared in southern Italy. The new book of Johannes Koder changes a bit the results of the study. No less than 3 different translations into Slavonic are known. One of them is a Serbian translation that was incorporated in the 14th century into the law code of Tsar Stefan Dušan. Another survives in a manuscript now in the library of the Hilandari Monastery of Mount Athos. A third translation is known from 11 East Slavic manuscripts of the collection known as law books, Knigi Zakonne. The language of the latter is very old, which suggests that the translation is done in the Balkans, let's say, most likely in Bulgaria under Tsar Simeon. The farmer's law regulates relations within rural communities, one rural community, and was probably applied as such in early medieval Bulgaria, although no direct evidence for this exists. The Mosaic law is a compilation of penal character based primarily on the rules of the Old Testament. The Greek original text was compiled at some point between the early 8th and mid-9th century. So under the iconoclastic emperors, where when it is underlined, the interest to the Old Testament, or in general to the Veterotestamentarian topics was very strong. Its earliest translation is in the Serbian nomocanon of St. Sava, so-called Svetosavsko zakonopravno. But later spread throughout the Balkans, Bulgaria included. There are also East Slavic copies of the text. The prohieros noms, or urban law, zakon Gradski, as it is known in the Slavonic translation, is law code of the Macedonian age, part of an imperial program of legislative reform with clear political goals. Until recently, it was almost unknown in its entire Slavonic translation. Various elements or titles were translated at a relatively early date, but the entire entire text of the law code was not known in early medieval Bulgaria. Its earliest Slavonic translation is from 13th century Serbia. The text was most likely written in Serbia or in the Hilandari monastery on Mount Athos in the early 13th century. Judging by the number of surviving copies, this text was widely applied in the South Slavic milieu in the Balkans as well as in Łódź. This is a real law code that contains rules on various cases and law domains. The collection of law books is a South Slavic compilation of texts from Prof, the law for judging the people and farmers' law, all of which had applicability in the Balkan countries. However, the compilation was later adopted in Rus as well. Instead of a collection of translated fragments from legal works mentioned both, this is a translation of a Greek collection, a translation of already done collection. Despite the numerous witnesses of the late South Slavic manuscript, the language, despite of this, that we have only this Eastern Slavic manuscript, the language of the translation is all pointing to a date for the translation during the reign of Tsar Simeon. And finally, I shall say some words, it's not Bulgarian, of course, about the law code of Tsar Stefan Dušan. It was promulgated immediately after the imperial coronation of Serbian Tsar Stefan Dušan in 1346, with the aim to reconfirm his pretended ecumenical power. His goal was to unite the Orthodox peoples under his power, following the messianic ideas about Serbs as a chosen people or New Israel. The relation to the law is direct in this case. Israel is the people of law, and the New Israel should be too. That's why the law is so important for all these messianic powers. Finally, the code is a compilation of many Byzantine legal texts and covering the regularization of many public, civil, penal, and other legal domains. Canon law collections, Numocanas. Collection of predominantly canon, so ecclesiastical law, combined sometimes with civilian law sources, were very popular in the Orthodox world. They were later called nomocanos. In the beginning, the word did not exist. Name meant to reflect their specific character resulting from the combination of ecclesiastical and civilian rules. Several such collections had an important role before the end of the Middle Ages until in the early modern times. Early modern times, let's say, under Ottoman rules, of course, as concerning the Balkans. First of them, the Numocanon of Saint Methodius. This is the Slavic text is known as Numocanon of Saint Methodius. It is based on that of St. John Scholasticus, which encloses the synagogue of 50 titles. This is canon law, and the Collectio Octaginta Septem Capitulorum, the civil law. This was one of the most important canonical collections in the Eastern Church. The canonical part of the text, the synagogue, was translated by St. Methodius into Old Slavonic in Bulgaria. As such, the text was relatively popular among the Orthodox Slavs and survived in two versions. First, in so-called Ustyuk Komicha, the book of Pilate, Ustyushka Komicha, and the other in the Yosaf Komicha. Both are later Eastern Slavic witnesses, but the language therein is very archaic, thus betraying its early origin in Moravia. From there, it passed to the South Slavic milieu before moving to Rus. In other words, there is no evidence that it came to Rus directly from Central Europe. Unfortunately, again, several Russian scholars, and especially Kirill Maximovich, returned several of these collections to pass from Central Europe directly to Kiev. Yes. That not many manuscripts are known maybe explain the terms of the archaic, in terms of the archaic language, the adoption of more recent compilation, and the decline of the popularity and use of the synagogue of St. John Scholasticus in Byzantium. Nevertheless, the nomen of Methodius was known everywhere within the Slavia Orthodoxa and had a significant impact on the later canonical tradition and legal language. Next is the nomen of Patriarch Photius. It consists of canon law known as Syntagma of 14 titles, and civil law part known as Collectio Tripartita. This is the second most important code of canon law associated to the great patriarch of 9th century. The prevailing opinion is that the Syntagma was translated in Bulgaria during the reign of Tsar Simeon, but no later of 912, since it includes the chronicle of Patriarch Nicephorus. This date is the last there. However, there are no South Slavic witnesses of the text, only Eastern Slavic, as usual, unfortunately. The most important of these Eastern Slavic witnesses is the Ephraim Komicha, the Book of Pilate. The nomen of Photius was object of many commentaries written in Byzantium during the great age of canonical commentary in the 12th century. It also represents an important basis for later developments of canonist literature in the Orthodox world. Following is the nomocanon or zakonopravilo of St. Sava of Serbia. It is, in the beginning, I declared that we should study Bulgarian and Serbian together. In this domain, there are some differences, of course. For example, lack of interest for judging the people in Serbia. But usually this is the same development. So, Zakonopravilo is actually a Slavonic translation of the Syntagma of 14 titles with commentaries by the 12th century canonists. Its author was most likely, it is discussable, but the figure representing was Saint Sava of Serbia, the founder and the first Archbishop of the Serbian Church, son of the great Župan Stefan Nemanja, so the founder of the dynasty, and brother of the first king of Serbia, Stefan the First Crown, Stefan Prvenčani. In the monastic milieu of the Nemanid foundation at Mount Athos, Hirondari, this great figure of the Serbian culture prepared the compilation that became the official code of the Archbishopric of Serbia. The code was then adopted throughout the Balkan before being sent in 1262 to the Metropolitan of Kiev, Cyril III, 1250, 1281, by an emigre from Halič Principality, Despot Jakub Svetoslav, who paid the copy of this great manuscript and sent it to the Metropolitan of Kiev. And what is most important, that we have the accompanied letter of the to the Metropolitan. We know how it arrived to the Eastern Slavs. The Nomogoron of Saint Sava had a great impact upon the development of canon law in Rus. The amplified text was printed in the mid-17th century in Moscow and returned to the Balkans as printed commentary and had its second reverse impact on South Slavic, let's say, canonical tradition. Following is the syntagma of Matthew Blastaris, 1335, called also alphabetic syntagma. This is a canon law collection created in Mount Athos by Matthew Blastaris, a Constantinopolitan lawyer who became monk after the death of his family in an epidemic. It became one of the most popular during the court. During the late Byzantine period and was translated in Old Church Slavonic before the middle of the 14th century, very fast. A part of it was included in the Code of Tsar Stefan Dush. We dispose of a Bulgarian redaction from 15th century of the text too. Obviously, it diffuses among the Balkan Slavs, and during the Ottoman rule was especially popular. In the end of 15th century and beginning of 16th century, the Lord of Moldavia, Stephen the Great, proclaimed the syntagma the main law code of the principality. Thus, it disseminated in the whole Romanian medieval space. The very structure of the code is specific and created difficulties with the translation. It is organized by alphabetical order, and every legal institute is classified under the first letter of its Greek denomination. Now, some words about penitential codes, or canonaria in the Greek. Known as canonaria in the Byzantine tradition, penitentials are manuals for the priests who hear confessions and prescribe penance. There are several collections of general use that appear in manuscripts all across Slavic Orthodoxy. One of the earliest is the so-called Commandments of Holy Fathers, which is created in the Syro-Methodian mission in Moravia. It is to say again that this text is unique, that is not a result of influence of the Byzantine legal tradition on the Slavs. It is a type of compilation on Western penitential. This is penitenziario Merseburghese, done in Greater Moravia by some of the disciples of Saint Gregorius. The oldest text, the translation, was written in Glagolitic alphabet and was included in the Colloquium Sinaicum, and it's kept now on Mount Sinai. The oldest Cyrillic copy is in the Ustюг Codice. Both copies do not contain the original Slavic text in its entirety. They are abbreviated, as translated in Moravia. The Glagolitic copy was written somewhere in Western Bulgaria, while the Cyrillic transcription was probably produced in Preslav. The text transcription, I mean the text, not the material manuscript of Ustюg culture. The text was known both to the Balkan Slavs and to those of Eastern Europe. The penitential canonarium at St. John the Nestetis, St. John the Faster, Postnik, is a collection of rules for the repentance related to the name of ecumenical patriarch John IV, 582 or 595. This was a very popular penitential for the Orthodox world, either in its own or as a part of different later codes, like the Syntagma, Letter Blastaris, for example. It consists of an initial basic text, Proto-Canonarium, with some later additions and Didascalia Patron, teaching of Holy Fathers. The old Slavic translation survives in Ustюg Codice, but is most likely done in Bulgaria in the monastic milieu around Preslav during the first half of the 10th century. There is, in fact, another Bulgarian copy from 14th century. It is very known, very, I would say, beloved object of research. This is the manuscript 1160 in 1160 from the Ecclesiastical Historical and Archival Institute at the Bulgarian Patriarchy. That represents a later redaction of the same translation. So we pass to the contacts of Nikon Mavroridis, or of the Black Mountain, Nikon Chernogorets. This is a compilation for monastic use as of different rules of the Holy Fathers, of the Church, canons of Church councils, homiletic works, and others, but put together by Nikon Mavroridis, an Antiochian jurist, monk, and writer, who was born in Constantinople in 1025 and died between 1100 or 1110 in a monastery around Antioch in the Black Mountain. The Slavic translation is quite early, but there is no scholarly agreement about its origin, Eastern Slavic or Bulgarian, not even about the existence of one or two translations. The word was known among both Eastern and South Slavs. The Slavonic Pseudo-Journalist, also known as Slavonic Mnemocanon of Cotillier, is a Slavic compilation based on but not identical with, so-called Nomocanon Cuteleri, a compendium of Byzantine law created in southern Italy in the 12th century and edited for the first and last up to now time by the French humanist Jean-Baptiste Coutelier in 1677. After that, it was only reprinted and did not gain any great scholarly interest. The Slavic compilation was much more popular than the Greek one and therefore attracted much more scholarly attention. During the late Middle Ages, this became the most popular, most popular Nomocanon of the Orthodox Slavs and the Romanians. And finally, the Nomocanon at the Great Colloquium is later denomination of this collection. This is a canon law collection intended mainly for the needs of the penitential discipline. It was prepared at the end of the 14th or the beginning of 15th century in Byzantium, probably on Mount Athos. Its popularity in the following centuries and the special position, due to the special position of ecumenical patriarchate under Ottoman rule, and this predetermined the translation into Slavic, made among the Southern Slavs in the 16th century. It was printed in the Lithuanian lands, which further increased its dissemination. The first edition of the Nomocanon in the rule book was made in 1620 by Count Berinda in the printing house of Kiev Pechora Lavra. There are following Kiev and Lviv editions and later Moscow Guide in 17th century. The printed version includes only part of the Greek original of the Nomocanon, namely the second penitential part of it with the act of confession, instruction for imposing penances, and instruction for the qualities of the confessing clergyman. The first, predominantly liturgical part is included in the triptych itself. That's why it is called the Great Colloquium, the Veliki Triptych. In the part of the concession, the purpose of this late collection is mainly practical and in connection with the penitential discipline. Due to their specific purpose, the main sources of the texts of the Nomocanon at the Great Colloquium are the canon of John Mesteftis, the Syntagon of Matthew Mostares, and the canonical collection of Constantine Armenopoulos. So I shall pass the text to generalization. The emergence of law is a cultural phenomenon directly related to the state formation and consolidation. Law did not simply appear in a vacuum. The normative system, in fact, replaced the previous customary religious or tribal rules, prescriptions, or restrictions. The main difference from the pre-law situation in the existence is the existence of the state institutions which intervened to guarantee and to enforce the rules. From that perspective, the question of the sources of law, so sources of law, not sources of history of law, which are legislation, custom, cases, and treatises, may be rephrased. At the beginning, any legal system, all those sources are essentially stories. I mean, in the very beginning, the appearance of the rules.
The legislation is a mythical story, a myth by itself, upon which it is based, is pure story of creation. This is usually the cosmological myths of the legislators who create the world, the people, and so on. The custom incorporates stories of the tradition, while cases are stories about resolutions. Finally, the treatise is a story about concordia, agreement. In short, the rules derive from these stories while proving a framework for order. They are known because of the story carriers and transmitters, the sources of the legal history. The people who know stories, these storytellers, these keeper of the mythological epos, were the early people took their law. Our civilizations evolved applying to all the countries in Central and Eastern Europe during the early period of their history, not only for Bulgaria or for Bulgaria and Serbia. This chapter looked, however, at the whole period of development till the 14th century. Stories may work as sources of law in an initial phase because of the persistence of the traditions. However, in all cases discussed here, those societies were not isolated, but under considerable influence from much more developed polities in vicinity. In Southeastern and Eastern Europe, the most important influence came from Constantinople. It was so robust as to turn written law entirely or almost entirely into Byzantine law. To some extent, the same is true for the Frankish and German influence in the East Central Europe, where, however, the most important influence came from the Holy See of Rome. All countries in Eastern Europe has in common a direct and strong association between the emergence and growth of law on one hand and Christianization on the other hand. Even outside influences from Byzantium or from Rome did not alter this association. Moreover, in Central, more than in Southeastern Europe, a synthesis is apparent and meeting of different influences and a common tradition ultimately resulting from the tradition of Saint Brothers from Thessalonica, Saint Cyril and Methodius, the celestial protectors who were as the Pope John Paul II. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Biliarsky, for this very clear and systematic lecture. And now we have time and opportunity to ask questions, Professor Biliarsky. And people online, of course, are also encouraged to ask questions. You can raise your hand and ask. No, as for now.
So I think that questions may be asked not only in English, so if you
Other
ask in
languages.
Bulgarian.
So, if I may, what language do you prefer, English or Bulgarian, for example? However, some of our colleagues probably do not understand clearly the Bulgarian, so maybe let us stay in English. I don't know.
Yes, we should.
We should, yeah. All right, so it was very interesting, and however, I have some questions and thoughts, comments concerning a particular cases. I will start with the ending, so which is quite interesting, because I can strongly agree that the law always appears as something given, not from nothing, something given by a divine authority. So in the way of which this authority created the world. So in this creation, we can find some ideas concerning the law, some rules of being or living, etc., etc. So don't you think that, because you have mentioned that there are in this literary law, pre-written law, this period, there was a difference between these two periods. In this pre-written law, we have a kind of a vacuum about the authorities. I think that there were authorities who stands on the ground of the law and look to keep, for the fathers to keep the law. For example, the priests, yes? So if we are talking about divine laws, these divine stories, mythical stories, so do you understand?
Yes, I think.
So I'm not sure that there was a difference. So because maybe the institutions in this later period were more visible, they were more in number, but in fact always somebody somewhere in each period looks for these rules to be respected. Yes. We can't find a society without rules, even these very early societies. So this is my first maybe observation, and I have a particular question concerning the Bulgarian history, medieval, this so-called Pagan period. Who, except you have mentioned these traditions, customs and stories, who was the source, was it of law in this period? The Khan, for example?
Okay, to the first question. Yeah. The theory of law deals deeply with the repression. And every, so the general structure of the norm, of every norm, is hypothesis, disposition, and sanction. Hypothesis is the circumstances, disposition is the norm, rule itself, and sanction is the sanction if you
not obey
to the rule. And then norm, because the law is not the unique normative system in any society, in ours too. So the morality is very important, and the morality has sanction too. This is the bad opinion of somebody who is bad. Ever there were some sanctions and some people who care about to punish all the entire society, not especially some individuals, to punish who does not did not obey the norms. Yes, of course. I entirely agree that every every authority and every power, not only state power, but tribal power, even more than the state power, and every rule should have some divine basis, because it is not easy to make somebody to obey to some rules if there is no divine basis of the rule and the authority. Of course, somebody can say that the sanction can make him obey, but the sanction is not enough. If it is mass disobedience of the rules, this should produce a type of terror population. So sanction is only for individual cases. So there should be. And this text about the mythological story of legislation is completely clear for the pagan societies. There is cosmogenesis, there is a creator who creates the world, the people, the man, and with this he gives them some norms, because the norms gives the identity of the creation. The normative is something to define, delimit the situation. Yes, I fully agree. As concerning the later period of development of the law, it is more specific. I can say something, but I'm afraid that it will go in a very different direction. Christian law, this was the part of the speech of the Pope Benedict XVI in the Bundestag of Germany, that Christian law never has a divine source. He has a divine basis of good and bad and so on, but not the divine will to act as a rule directly. The difference is clear with the Jewish law and with Muslim law that has divine source from the revelation. And this makes a difference, but this does not touch the other question of mythological origin of the early and the pagan rules. So this is one. The second question. In the Bulgarian society, who was the source? I think that so first we do.
Yeah.
Second,
I'm asking the one. What do you think?
I think that a part of these sources, this was the tradition, the customs and so on. This is the general. Obviously, a part of the case is taught to us by the Pope Nicholas I, cannot come from the tradition. For example, the punishment of the guardians of the frontier. This is clearly very detailed something. Or the rules about the warrior should come when there is a campaign and so on. This is very detailed, and this was created. Yes, maybe the warrior tradition of the society, but finally there was some will imposing these rules. Yes, it should be the will of the Bulgar power, because the state was not a confederation, and the Bulgars were ruling minority, probably minority. Okay.
Thank you. Is it possible to add something, or we have no?
Do we have time?
Because I have a few other, maybe smaller. I agree with you in the topic of it's kind of mystification, because we have to remember what kind of source it was. It was a kind of lexicon encyclopedia for the rulers, younger Byzantine rulers. And his story about Krum was a kind of, for example, how to rule. So the idea was, look, even this pagan ruler, as Krum, this a very bad new Sennacherib, the new Sennacherib, the antagonist, Byzantine, one of the biggest. Even he was so wise to learn from his enemies, yes, how to rule. So, and of course, we have also archaeological data concerning this topic, because in Suda is mentioned that he he didn't allow to produce wine, and we know that from the archaeological data concerning the first decades of the middle century, that in Pisca there were places in which wine was produced in his time. So it's obvious that this is a mystification. Yes.
I think that this is a clear topos.
Yeah.
Clear topos, and you mentioned with reason that it was dedicated to prepare future power people. And the topos is so this is not an answer, but confirmation in the words of your statement. The topos is about the good ruler, and the good ruler is ever wise, ever strong, and ever with alliance with the people. So there is a structure of three parts. Structura tripas dita. The ruler, the dignitaries, and the people. Dignitaries are there. And the wise ruler is in alliance with the people against the dignitaries. What is clear in the story in lexicon, and also the story about the eradication. These is the most mythological, of course. As an anecdote, some people ask what drank Krum from the cup, a crane of Nicephorus. So should be wine. And yes, it is interesting, the topic is interesting, but clearly not true in literary truth. Maybe there is other type of truth.
However, in his times, obviously there were rules, law,
Yes,
of course, but we don't know what kind of, for example. Particular. Okay, I will meet other comments and ask the last line question, because it was quite interesting for me. You have mentioned this Gradski Zakon. What kind of law, city law it was? Could you say a few words about it? And was it in some ways or not similar with this city laws from Western European territories, Latin world?
First of all, I cannot say if it was similar because there are many of Western.
Yeah, there are differences, of course.
It is a translation on the basis of prohero. Proheros nomos, meaning handbook. Heroes, handbook about the law. Why? So, Mariana Cibranska is the first who published recently this text, and I strongly hope that you have the book.
Probably.
It is Prohero, Zakon.
Yeah.
You should have it. Why? For me, it is a bit strange that in the Slavic tradition, it is called Zakon. She published in these 2 volumes in memory of non-Jew, an article about the organization of the city. And obviously that's why this is one of the chapters. This is 20 and something chapters. In Bulgaria, as everywhere in Europe, there is a law. It is called Закон за устройство на територията. This regulates the city organization, the roads organization, and the methods of building and so on. This law, this chapter of the Prof, and that's why it is called Zakon Gradsky, is clearly on this topic. And here again, we cannot say, no, we can't say, I would like to say, we cannot say that in Bulgaria the cities were so organized as simply said. No, we can say that in Bulgaria cities were not so well organized in the beginning. And the transcription of the law is not made because of idea of application, only because there are many floors buildings, the canalization of the city, the water in the city, and so on and so on. Nothing like this, or rudimental maybe, in Bulgaria. And the law was translated for the reasons, I think. So I cannot say, maybe there is something, but it is only a part of the law, this city organization and so on. If not, this is just a handbook. So in Byzantium, maybe it was not exactly law, but a handbook of law.
Yeah. Maybe there was an idea, for example, in Bulgaria, to use it in some way, but they didn't.
An idea for sure, because
Yeah.
the capital was thought as.
But it was not easy to apply to today's situation. Oh, yeah. Okay, thank you.
I think we have some more time for questions. Are there online anyone who wants to add questions? I don't see. Here, may I add
Yes,
2 questions,
yes,
short?
no, it's not a question.
First, consider you talked about Ekloga and Izagoge, that it was Ekloga which was translated instead of Izagoge, which was more up to date, let's say. But it's an interesting question why it was Ekloga which was translated, but is this question important? I mean, let me explain short. Because, for example, it was synagogue of 50 titles from canonical law, which was translated instead of Prefoxian version of syntagma of 14 titles. But if you take this book as a set of instructions, set of rules, and you have some problem, canonical problem to deal with, and your solution would be the same. Definitely, if you take synagogue of 50 titles and syntagma of 14 titles, because the main part of these books is the same. Is it the case of Ekloga and
norms are the same.
Norms are the same. Yeah, there's just some introduction different and so on. So is it this question why Ekloga was translated instead of Isagoge? Is it just interesting or is it important question? Because the set of rules was substantially different. Is there many differences between these two?
Differences, yes, there are. Because today we spoke with you, and you mentioned asylum. For example, obviously the iconoclastic emperors were strongly, or at least a bit, anti-ecclesiastic, iconoclasts. And in Ekloga, for example, as concerning, I speak about this because I worked, but this could be found in the other chapters too. Because of their progress with the church, there is a diminution of the punishment about the transgression of the zeal. Right. For example, if somebody went to a church to ask asylum, and if some power take you in the late Roman and after iconoclastic rules, the punishment was death or much severer than in the Ekloga, for example. So the power of the church was limited in this sense. And not only this, because, the law for judging the people, there again, there is augmentation of this punishment, the transgression of the zeal. And you see that this ideology of iconoclastic emperors had some impact. But the most important was not this difference, because anyway, it was not so important. The most is to declare that these emperors, the incarnation of the evil, of the devil, and so we should erase the memory from them. That's why they try to replace everything done by them, or except the victories over their enemies, because they were soldiers, military emperors that were strong in this direction. Maybe not all of them, but it is the first.
Thank you. There is one thing more which I'm thinking about metaphor of giving the law, because in some texts, instead of writing that Boris Christianized Bulgaria, is written that he gave or took the law. Yes,
this is instead of the rebellion of the Mulas.
Yeah, and this is a kind of metaphor. And in general, my question is how we can understand this metaphor. Is it just literal, meaning that when we Christianize our country, we have new books of law? Is there any other possibility? And I thought about this, and before you switch to the last slide, and when I saw last slide, it was quite fascinating. And I think we can treat this metaphor as evidence that they were more conscious than we, that law is just narrative, just myth and metaphor in its
yes, this is one. And the other is, for example, in Bulgaria, before the Second World War, there was not separation between the church and the state. And kids in the school should have discipline to study the small kids about the Orthodox religion or anyone's religion. And the discipline was called Zakon Boží. This is why Zakon, but not anything else. I think, I'm not sure this, so I wrote something. I think that this comes from the Old Testament, where there is a full coincidence between the religions and the law. And that's why these traditions passed even in Christianity. And in Christianity it is different. There is this preacher, Prof, in the Gospel, with the temptation with the oboe. Some bad Pharisees went to Lord Jesus Christ and asked him, Rabbi, should we pay taxes to the Caesar? And he understood that they want, if he says, no, this is a pagan emperor, you should not pay any taxes to him, they will tell to the Roman power. If he says, yes, of course, this is our emperor, they will go to Siledrion and say, he's with the pagans, so this traitor. And he told them, give me a coin. They gave him a coin. Which is this image here on the coin? This is the Caesar. Okay, then give, I cannot say in English, dajte Božje to Bogu I Kesarevo to Kesaru. Give what is divine to God, and what is Caesar's to the Caesar. So there is clear difference between the kingdom of God and the kingdom of the Caesar. And law, kingdom of the Caesar is not bad. On the contrary, it is good. Incarnation in the Roman Empire, in the flesh, and in the human body, with all the needs of the human body, gives justification of the matter, and of the state, of the law, of the earth, of the world, and so on. But this is not the kingdom of God. It is good for our life, but the salvation is in the kingdom of God. So, law is in the kingdom of the Caesar. For the Jews and for the Muslims, law is, if there is such a separation in their thought, it should be in the kingdom of God.
Thank you. Okay. Any more questions? I don't see anyone online to have questions. I think we are over as well.
With questions, yes. If I may, I would like to say a few words. I don't have any particular question, but I want to remind the fact that Professor Ivan Biliarsky is not only a great researcher and famous in several fields, but also our dear friend and a member of the Scholarly Advisory Board of the Sereneum Center, and also one of the authors in our Seria Serenea and Studia Serenea.
Yes.
Both, exactly.
Thank
So
you.
I would like, on behalf of the entire team of Saranem Center, to express our pleasure and joy that we have you here, that we can meet you here in person, thanks to the program Prizes of Humanities, financed by the city of Łódź. Now you are visiting our center not for the first time, and I hope, I'm sure actually, that we will have this opportunity to meet you here in the future. So, Professor, thank you very much for the great lecture, for the discussion, and also for your significant work as a member of our center. Thank you very much to all our participants here and also the audience online. And also I would like, last but not least, to thank the organizers of the visit, Professor Biliarsky, Dr. Jan Polski, and Dr. Zofia Rzeźnicka. Thank you.
Thank you.